people that's watching, I wanted to bring up for people. Now, this young man, Kamelo Anthony, and we're going to be honest, we really don't know what happened.
Absolutely.
We do know that he admitted to stabbing the young man, right?
Right.
So we also know he was charged with first-degree murder and given a $1 million bond, right? Now, we look at that in contrast to a young white kid that did the same thing, probably 30 minutes to an hour away from where this incident has. His name is Kamelo Allison. And he did not get that $1 million. But Kamelo Allison also got arrested after, again, for beating up a family member. Now, when you look at the police report, they report that Anthony was never given his Miranda rights when the cop arrested him. So now, under the Fifth Amendment, his admission might get pulled out because he did admit to the cop. But there's nothing in the report that says that the cop read him his Miranda rights. But one of the tragedy of this whole situation is the race-based public narratives that have come out, and it's also reinforcing biased perceptions. And I'm really upset about it because what I see, and what I'm calling it now, is a lot of redneck black people. I got it from Thomas Sowell. Redneck black people.
You listening to him too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, right. I'm a problem now, right?
Yeah, oh man. You got
redneck black people.
Fallacies.
Yes. Right? On social media, they have amplified a lot of false claims, especially the GoFundMe claim that he bought a house and the family bought cars when they wasn't even using GoFundMe to actually do it, right? And failure of these influencers, black and white, on social media, without acknowledging similar cases. So if they want justice for the Metcalf family, they should also want justice to the Hispanic boy that was killed by the white boy. But nobody on social media is talking about that. And now I want to go into the mother, and then we can have the conversation.
Searching for a better life. Like so many other families, we wanted to give our children the future we did not have. My husband works hard every single day to provide for us, to make sure we're in the best financial position possible. As a stay-at-home mom, I made it my life's mission to ensure our children are loved, nurtured, and supported every step of the way. In wake of this tragic incident, our family has been under attack. Whatever you think what happened between Karmelo and the Metcalf boys, my 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be threatened, harassed, and lied about. The lies and false accusations that have been said about us, especially over the past week, has been overwhelming. The lies and their amplification put my family in danger, as well as everyone in our community, everyone involved in the investigation, from the police, the attorneys, and the court staff. Our address and my husband's previous employer's address has been put on all social media platforms. My husband had to take a leave of absence because he's afraid what may happen to our family. His mental health is deteriorating day by day. We have endured death threats. My 13-year-old daughter is afraid to sleep in her own bedroom because she's fearful of what may happen to her. And let me be clear, the claims that were used about the public donation to buy a home or anything else are completely false. We have not received a single dime from the Give, Send, Go fundraiser. And the co-founder has stated that clearly. In the reality, we were just notified yesterday that we could begin to withdraw funds. And it still takes several days to receive those funds once a request is made. I don't know why we are being targeted and discriminated against before a fair trial. Our son deserves the same rights under the law that everyone is afforded to.
That's right.
He's been raised in a 2-parent home with structure, stability, love, and we put God first in everything that we do. We believe in the Constitution, we believe in the laws of this state, but those laws must apply to all of us, not just some of us. To be clear, we will not speak publicly about specific details of what happened under the tent on that rainy and awful day. There's an active investigation that everyone involved wants to be full and fair. We believe in the legal process, and that is where the truth will come out. To the family who experienced the loss, my heart truly goes out to you. To those who have supported my family, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We ask for your continued support, patience, and prayers as we navigate this difficult process. Thank you.
So I've read a lot of things, and I've been seeing a lot of things, and I've been seeing a lot of comments about this young man. What I haven't been seeing, the mainstream media likes to dehumanize us in these situations. So let me just tell you who Karmelo Anthony is before this incident. He's a senior at Fresco Centennial High School. He is captain of both the football and track team. He holds 2 part-time jobs and is an A student who's making plans to go to college and was on track to graduate next month. Those are not the narratives that I'm reading about when I hear about this guy. These like just short of being like a gangbanger, bringing a knife to school, and I'm hearing a lot of things, so I just wanted to get that out because I'm not hearing that enough. And I think that's important that when we have these conversations that this is who this young man is. And as his mother said, he comes from a 2-family household. They lived, I forgot where they used to live. They moved, they born in Baton Rouge, but they moved to North Texas for a better life and better opportunities. So, they brought a house out there and this kid is doing what he's doing. And that's who this young man is. And I just wanted to share that before we even got into this conversation. You must be muted or something because I can't hear you.
Me?
Oh, go ahead. I hear you now.
No, those are good points. The reality is that the media, the mainstream media, has always taken opportunities like this to convict individuals before they ever have a trial. And there's no presumption of innocence. As a criminal defense attorney, one of the things that I try to stress to jurors when they are seated is that my client sits at that table under the complete presumption of innocence, no matter what he's charged with. He has that presumption of innocence right now as we speak on this show. Right now as he speaks, he has that presumption of innocence. And unless and until the state puts forth evidence that meets every element of the crime that's alleged to have occurred to the standard that it is beyond a reasonable doubt, he is still innocent of any crime. And like I said, the media ends up convicting individuals, particularly black individuals, before they ever have a trial, before they're indicted sometimes, before they're often even interviewed by law enforcement or even by their own attorney. Media comes out with the story and they begin to taint the jury by putting out narratives that aren't true. So many people have said that there's a knife involved in this. There's a stabbing. There's a knife that's involved in this. Well, reports are saying that it likely is not going to be a knife that did any of this. And so I look to, and I try to do this with all of the high-profile cases that come out. Just keep an open mind and look at what is presented as far as evidence. That's not being done. Another phenomenon that occurs in situations, particularly where self-defense is asserted. Self-defense is an affirmative defense. It's essentially, I did it, but under the law, I was entitled to do it. Police officers claim it often. The force was reasonably justified under the circumstances. But importantly, when a white person makes a claim of self-defense, in most situations, he is given that benefit of the doubt as soon as he makes that assertion. Particularly by mainstream. But when a black person makes the same claim of self-defense, when a black person makes the same claim of self-defense, in the beginning, mainstream media does nothing to give that black person the benefit of the doubt. They do nothing to really do the deep investigation. They just present a narrative often that is bereft of any of the real facts of the situation that they present. There's a stabbing, there's a black kid who stabbed the white boy, and the white boy ended up dead. And that evokes all of the emotion and rage out of white people who are thinking about this being something that it may not be at all. And then it also it stokes up the fear of what this system may do to this young brother, because he's not going to be given the same presumptions of innocence as his white counterparts are in the exact same system. And we're still at the point where we are looking for equality or equal justice under the law. And equal justice is really location-based, because you may not get a fair trial in some parts of this country. Period. You may not get to be able to put forth the type of defense that you want to in some parts of this country. And certain parts of this country, there are still biases that people will enter into the jury pool with and keep those biases all the way through until they render a verdict. And so these are all the factors that are going to be playing out in this particular case as we move forward. And it's been pretty difficult to watch this young brother who, like you said, I love what you did in the beginning, which is essentially humanized him. You've taken him off of what mainstream media has painted him with, and you begin to tell the story of who he truly is, who his parents are, what they did there. And so people making judgments about him right now without knowing all of the facts, without knowing him as a person, they're way far off in left field with that as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And I just feel like, because that's one of the reasons we started Black Westchester, because of how we are portrayed in the media. Also, Texas is a stand your ground state, isn't it?
Yes.
And can you explain from a legal term what that means?
So stand your ground is essentially that you don't have to give up an inch when somebody assaults you or you're being assaulted. You can stand your ground. You do not have to retreat. Okay, so there's no retreat. You can defend yourself, and you could use up to and including deadly force. And those factors that are involved in the use of force, what's going to be determined is, was that force reasonable under the circumstances? My understanding of the facts are there are at least two people that were assaulting Mr. Anthony. There are at least two people that were assaulting Mr. Anthony. I don't know about you, but two is more than one. And so one person has the right to defend himself against two people who are assaulting him. And if one of them ended up dead, that's on one of them. And so when you take it upon yourself to assault somebody in two people, if there were two black people, they'd be called a gang. Okay? And so two people were assaulting Karmelo Anthony, and he had a right and a duty to protect himself against that attack. And he got one of them off of him. And that one person, unfortunately, succumbed to his wounds and passed away.
Absolutely. And that's what's coming out now, that it wasn't a fair fight.
It wasn't a fair fight.
And someone played one of the adults that were there was telling the story, and the fact that both of the twins attacked Anthony, whether it's true or not. My only response to that, I hope you told the police, instead of being on social media, that you went to the authorities and
Right.
gave you, instead of, doing all this social media stuff.
Right.
Oh, the one thing I forgot, Jonathan, when I gave that explanation of who he was, he also had no prior criminal activities. He was never, and I think that's very important too, because the narrative, he's a black kid, he did this thing, he must have been like a gangbanger, just that whole,
This is not somebody who had anything that would militate towards him having a bad temper or anything like that, any kind of involvement with law enforcement prior. And so if anybody should have been given the benefit of the doubt, and that $1 million bond should have not been given
is wrong.
From the outset, it should have been him. But again, in the media and in the court system, in some areas, our people are not treated the same as other people are. And that's still a challenge that we have all across this country.
Right. And the fact that the black judge, reduced it. They attacked her, called her a liberal, all these names, and she's a Republican.
And she's a Republican.
She's not even and this is how these redneck blacks. This is what they do, bro.
Yeah.
They perform for these hillbilly white people. They perform because that's how they get their likes. That's how they get their numbers up on social media, and that's how they make their money.
Absolutely.
We gotta understand they make money.
It's a business for them.
Absolutely.
David, I tell you, the easiest money I could have made in my entirety of my life was when I was doing the police accountability with the National Association Against Police Brutality. Would have been to not remain objective and really slide over to the conservative side and become this step and fetch, repeating of whatever the narrative was that was going to be given by other people. And I just simply chose not to. It is easy to become the latest, greatest footstool, or excuse me, a person who's being used by I won't say the Republican Party, but the conservative elements of our community. And they'll pay you money, fly you around as long as you toe the party line and don't remain objective. But like you said about Bill Maher, I'll cut both ways on it. I mean, in this situation, he does have he has a right to a trial. He has the presumption of innocence. He has every protection that one of those white boys should get, and he should be presumed innocent until guilty, even in the media. And so, when you look at the independent news sources, I'm thankful for the job that you're doing. I'm thankful for the job that a lot of people are doing in terms of being able to present him truly as he is. They've been spinning this since it occurred, and once an airing of the facts happens, then a jury, a fact finder, will be able to make a determination. Was the force reasonable that was used in this? And again, if I were defense in this, I'd be like, we got at least 2 on 1. So with that just alone right there, 2 on 1 sets up a dynamic that, deadly force is on the table at that point.
Well, Craig McFarland, it says, who are the twins to ask Anthony to move from where he has been? Have a reason to be present. Well, I mean, we're still trying to find that out now, right? Because it's still not clear. It's still not clear what happened. Only thing we know that he did say he did it, and that he asked, was the kid okay, according to the police report.
Right. I got the report right here, and it's, first off, my experience tells me, and David, you know this, these are generally theater and fiction.
Exactly.
A lot of times. And I make my entire living now locking the officers into what they put down on this, because by the time they get on the stand, it's an entire other narrative with a whole bunch of things that are added to or left out from what they originally said. And so the reality is that there's a lot of investigation that needs to take place in this, and there's a benefit of the doubt that needs to be presumed here. And just the fact that they moved that quickly to charges, okay, just move that quickly to first degree, murder that fast lets you know essentially where the mindset is, even of these that law enforcement agency.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
is there any video? Is there any evidence? Nobody knows. I use the analogy: Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. What the hell? Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. What the hell happened up the hill? Well, we send the cops up the hill, find out if there are any videos, or any third-party witnesses. You know, because Jack is going to have a story and Jill's going to have a story. At the end of the day, nobody knows what the hell happened up the hill. And in this situation, the only people who know are the people who were on the scene, okay? And then you start looking at what are the biases that those individuals have. You know, does what they say match up with what is really there? You know, how many stab wounds were on this individual? Was this, you know, something that, you know, was a one stab wound and then the person bled out? Or was this, you know, much more than that? And so all of that will go into the evaluation of whether this use of force was reasonable or not. And what we need to really be focusing right now on is he getting a fair investigation? Because if he doesn't get a fair investigation from the jump, I'm going to tell you, that's going to end up being like one of my cases that I have right now, where a gentleman was convicted wrongfully, spent 13 years in jail, and he got a fair investigation, and the investigator said that the facts that were articulated before the grand jury and at trial were not consistent with the facts that he found. And what the prosecutors chose to do in that particular situation was bench that particular investigator. And so that's going to be an interesting one. I'm working on hard to get that situation dealt with. But absolutely, first time in my life I've ever seen an investigator, and he vehemently says, you know, I felt like I was benched after he told them that this is what I found, and the facts just did not line up with the narrative, and they stayed stuck with it. And so I'm praying that this gentleman, this Mr. Anthony, gets a fair investigation, because a lot of things can be presented in ways that sort of, you know, create a narrative that's running along with the media narrative. And that's problematic. You don't want to have investigators following what's said in the media. Investigations need to go from one piece of evidence to another piece of evidence and follow where the evidence leads. And if you don't, what you're doing is you're rigging up cases to be able to convict people based on what you think, feel, believe, hope, assume, wish, suppose, suspect. And that's what happens a lot of times in a lot of cases.
Well, as Damon always says, Lady Liberty that's supposed to be blind sometimes peeks under the blindfold to see if it's a black or a poor or a brown defendant.
It's definitely, you know, in one of the criminal procedure books that I read when I was in law school, and I really appreciated it, said there's two models of criminal justice. One essentially says that it's called a crime control model. One says that, you know, crime is so out of control that we have to skip some of the formalities just so that we can control crime. And the other is the due process model. And that model says, you know what? That person is due all of the process that our Constitution has entitled him to. And therefore, we're going to do this by the book and step by step. Now, I want to ask you something. Which model do you think is applied in communities of color generally? And which model?
The first one?
The first one ain't the due process model. We know that.
Exactly. So you find people, you know, saying, well, you know, that's what we believe, but under the totality of circumstances, we believe the officer meant this or we meant that. You know, I'm working another case where on the search warrant applications, there is a timestamp of 12 o'clock as receiving the search warrant application. The judge receives it at 12 o'clock, and guess what time he stamped it as good to go, out the door, ready to go? 12 o'clock. And it's a 13-page document, and I mean, so he had to ingest all of that material inside the same minute and stamp that search warrant, and it's impossible. So the question is now you've given the search warrant to officers, and they go and effectuate that search warrant, execute that search warrant, get what they really wanted to get, which was the ability to you know, get the contraband that was allegedly located in the place that they wanted to search, and now that person is facing charges. Now watch this. Even if the courts deem that the search warrant is bad because there wasn't a substantial basis to issue that search warrant, or the judge really just didn't do his job, the officer may still be covered under the good faith exception that says that he just did his job in good faith, and therefore what he found upon that search still is admissible in court.
Wow,
So,
really?
yeah, there's so much stuff that I have learned throughout this process. It's incredible. Yeah, look up the good faith exception to the search warrant. To search warrant.
Now, Jonathan, let me ask you a question. So the police report, did they find the knife?
So as I read through this, especially on the front page, I was looking for the knife. I was looking for a description of the knife. I was looking for, something. If you go to page 3 of 7, it says eventually one of the witnesses said they remember seeing it on the bleachers. Officer Shells was able to locate the knife. It was located between rows 9 and 12. Okay. So they located a knife somewhere at some point, okay? But they did not locate this knife on him. And so my question would be, is his DNA on it? Is his fingerprints on it or anything like that? Or was this knife then placed there by a third party to make this look like what they want it to look like? There's, but that's there. It's in on page 3 of 7. And it says,
because how could it be on the bleachers when he ran away?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, trust me when I tell you, when I started lawyering on this, I was like, wow, I'd like to have that one, because there's a lot of meat on that bone for a criminal defense attorney. And
right, because how they could prove that someone else on the bleachers didn't have a knife? Like how there were other people there, right? Like how
is that knife the actual, the weapon that was used in this? And so there's a lot. And this is the thing, this is what criminal defense attorneys do, right? It's not our job to create reasonable doubt. It's our job to be able to find reasonable doubt. So, like you said, Damon, he alleged to have ran out of there as soon as this happened. So where was the knife found is the first question I want to know. The way they described this in here, it was found in a place that was different from where the actual incident took place. So There's a lot of meat on this bone. My prayer is that not only does he get a fair investigation, but that also that his attorneys are really on their job to be able to break this down. And because for me, the way that I do this, and I've done it for a couple of murder cases and I've been successful at, is I take this document and I chew it to pieces. Every factual inconsistency that's factually inconsistent with the evidence. That's what I begin to put down as my trial points. I rate evidence. I give them grades, and I call it the 4F system. The first is that each fact is it a favorable fact? Is it a flexible fact? Is it a formidable fact? Or is it an effed up fact? So, favorable facts are facts that are good for my client. Flexible facts are facts that can go either way. Formidable facts are bad facts, but I might be able to muddy the waters. And then there are facts, like, people on video doing things. Can't really.
Exactly.
You got a jail call where you're telling the girl that you're alleged to have beat. Hey, baby, I'm sorry. Not even that I can lawyer on, okay? Because you're sorry for what? The relationship is bad. But when you follow it up with something like, at least it wasn't as bad as the first time I beat you, I'm kind of done at that point. I'm on a rescue mission at that point.
Right.
So let me ask you a question. You was talking about search warrants and stuff. So if the individual is not read his Miranda rights, anything he says or any search warrant that would be gained because of anything he said, that is fruit under the poisonous tree or something like that, right? How does that work?
So a statement, right, that somebody makes, if they're in custody, okay, if they're in custody, then any statements that are made that are part of an interrogation, a custodial interrogation, there has to be Miranda rights read before the statement can be admitted in court. So, in this particular incident, on page 2, I believe it was, down in the supplemental, I think it says, as I was approached, Officer Cortez stated Anthony was the alleged suspect. Anthony then made a spontaneous statement and stated, I am not alleged, I did it, right? And so that's a spontaneous utterance that'll come in, okay? Once he's put in custody, if he had been asked, hey, did you do this? And he was not Mirandized, then that will be suppressed. But if and this is what I tell people, like, when you are in any situation where law enforcement is investigating a crime, don't say anything at all.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, the only thing you say is, "I need to speak with my lawyer." And so, being flippant at the mouth in that moment can cause a whole lot of because to be honest with you, prior to this, the police have to prove who did it. Who did it?
Right.
If you own it, you've taken that whole thing off the plate now. Off their plate of things to do. So that statement may come in under spontaneous utterance. It wasn't really part of a custodial interrogation that requires Miranda.
Right. And this is very important for parents, especially Black parents.
Yeah.
We have to teach our children what to do when stopped by the police, or as I say, how do you survive police confrontation? Yeah. Because we have to start. We still. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what political circles and social circles that you are in. If you are a Black person of many hues, you should teach your children what to do when stopped by the police, what to say and what not to say when stopped by the police, whether they're on foot, in a car, or wherever. We fail to do that because we think that we're up some type of social status that it makes our children immune to these situations.
Not at all. And in fact, when we were doing a lot of the work with the police, with the National Association Against Police Brutality, we had essentially 3 pillars of our organization: education, empowerment, and then accountability. You really can't get any empowerment. You're not empowered if you're not educated on these things, and you will never be able to get to any accountability unless you understand, what's out here and how it goes down. I was surprised. So many people, they don't know the law. It's never been really explained to them. Like, officer pulls you over, does he have the right to ask you out of the car? Yes, he does. There's a case on point, Pennsylvania v. Mims, says officer can ask you to get out of the car. Some people have lost their life behind that fight.
Exactly.
Unnecessarily. Exactly. We have not done a good job explaining to parents, and the parents have not been educated enough to explain it to their children. What are your rights and what are your obligations? Just, we have this circle, it's a fear to fatality circle. The police pull you over, you are in fear. And so you do certain things that triggers them through their training at the police academy to do certain things that creates more fear, that causes them to do more things, that causes more fear. And until that
exactly.
Because in order to break that cycle, we have to educate our community and our culture about what police are allowed to do. And when they are not doing it the right way, don't confront them about it. Let them stay long and strong and wrong, and pray that there's body-worn camera footage rolling and somebody will stop it. You're not going to win out there and I caught a lot of flack for that. We just tell them just to comply. I'm saying comply so that you don't die.
Exactly. I say the same thing. And people get mad at me.
I was like, listen, this is not the place. On the side of the road, the police officer is the judge, jury, and if he wants to, he will be the executioner. You're not going to win that argument right then and there. No. So, it's not the place for it, but got so much flack. And you saw what happened to me, Damon.
Yeah, man. Listen, I got flack when I just said, I said, well, what if Sandra Bland just put the cigarette out?
Man, I know they can't.
What if she just put the cigarette out? Because her refusing to put the cigarette out push this cop to another level. And I tell people, you never know the mentality, capacity of the police officer that pulls you over.
I remember the Sandra Bland killing. It was 2015. I was a second year in school, and I didn't ask that question then. What if she had put the cigarette out? Because I was steeped in, the idea that the conclusion was
was totally wrong.
But you asked a very powerful question, and that when we start educating our community, we absolutely have to start telling our community how you survive these encounters, and also how you it's part of where we live in. So what you need to not do to create the potential triggers for these guys and ladies to go off on you, and so
Exactly.
survive it, and then come back and document your encounter, and hope that documentation creates there's a pattern that can be identified, and then that officer can be taken off the streets. You're not going to win with you and him one-on-one like that. And so
exactly. What changed my view, and when I started teaching how to survive police encounters, was I saw an old tape of Johnny Cochran, and they asked Johnny Cochran, well, what should we do? He said, shut up, obey everything they say, take notes, get home, and call me.
That's right. That's right.
Simple.
You know, and
Simple.
you've had people who were from 2014 all the way to the time 2022 sticking on. You know, we don't have to get out the car. We don't have to do that. I'm like, man, listen, you're giving out wrong information. What you're doing is you are causing the death of certain people, and you are absolutely causing the death of them by not putting that out. And so I still have a deep commitment to police accountability. Obviously, I evolved some too, because I believe in personal accountability as well. And it's a mixture of both of them that I believe that will get us beyond where we are still at. Where, you know, if you don't understand what's happening when you are pulled over at a traffic stop or even stopped by police, you can be killed out there because you simply just did not abide by some commands at that point in time.
Absolutely.
One of the things I learned from my interactions with Damien and other people in law enforcement, that the average citizen doesn't understand. When a cop pulls you over, that first 15 to 30 seconds, they do not know what they're walking up on.
Absolutely.
You could have actually just, you know, been a bank robber, or somebody who just did a violent crime and is not going to jail. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like up to you to let them know that you comply or whatever, that you're not a threat to them, because you never know. They don't know what they're walking. They don't know what they're walking up on.
When I was a police officer, and I went to the police academy, I remember doing this drill where we simulated the pullover, and I walked up and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And the instructor stopped me cold. He says, "Not at all, Mr. Newton. It's not going to be done like that," because I was thinking this was going to be a casual encounter, and it is anything but a casual encounter because of all the things that you just said, right? You really don't know what you're encountering, and so you need to be tactically ready. And so what happens is a lot of times, a lot of officers take that tactical readiness to a stage that is beyond ready and sometimes unnecessary. And they're doing that again because of that fear to fatality cycle. Because believe it or not, officers may not admit this, but there's a lot of fear in them as well too as they're making that approach.
Absolutely. We're going to move on, but I wanted to close this out, and I have to give props where props is due to the Metcalf twins' father, and I'm going to show everybody why.
And stay with that. Maybe you can. Would you be willing to stand by me in a press conference or in an individual interview and talk about this issue that is larger than Austin at this point? God rest the beautiful young man's soul that would have been one of our strongest voices if he was still alive today.
You know?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, my turn to speak. You are part of the problem, my friend. You're trying to create more race divide than bridging the gap. I do not condone anything you do. You do not have any.
That's called white guilt.
No, let it talk.
My son, let me finish. I'm giving your time. You take my son's face off your website. I am not associated with you.
You're creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness, sir. You are creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness.
You are being weak. I gotta be honest with you about that, sir.
You're being weak. Condemn your son's killer and the culture that caused it.
Hey, Jeff.
That's the problem. You've been submitted.
That's what we're talking about. Black rednecks and white hillbillies. Right there, and I give the father props for calling it what it is and telling. I don't know who that white guy was, and I don't know who was the black redneck behind him talking about there's a black guy here, you white guy. Listen, this is going to be the next fight for black people. That's going to be the next fight. Exactly. And really, black folks are stuck in the middle because we're stuck between redneck black people and black elites that think they know everything for us.
Right. And this is not
we got a problem.
Yeah, and this is not the time for certain conversations, right? This is a time to let this brother go through his situation, and so that we allow him to get the purest and most fairest trial that he possibly can. A lot of like you said, black elites are going to take this as an opportunity to talk about the culture, and he may not even fit into that culture.
Right.
Exactly.
He might. He's not. He doesn't appear to be a gangbanger.
Exactly.
But here we're going to take this tragic event and turn it into an opportunity. You wasn't saying nothing before this, okay? And so what we should be really talking about is taking this as an opportunity to talk about the fundamental fairness that he's due out of a trial and the presumption of innocence that he's due, and the fact that we're still not getting equal treatment under the law. And we're going to sit around over the next 2 years while this spins out, okay? And America is going to be very similarly postured to when the O.J. Simpson trial, the O.J. Simpson verdict came.
I was thinking the same thing.
And, when George Zimmerman was acquitted down there in Florida for killing Trayvon Martin, right? He was given the presumption of innocence, and his story of self-defense was bantered about all the way through. And this kid was killed with holding a bag of Skittles.
And even when he was told to stay in his car and do not apprehend, do not follow those were the instructions he was given by the police, and he disobeyed that, and he pursued him.
Yeah. So he was given all of that as the benefit of the doubt when those set of facts would not militate towards a finding of self-defense. A jury saw fit to give him that self-defense defense based on their interpretation of the facts. But the reality is can it be said that truly was an act of self-defense when you are the primary aggressor, the initial instigator of the entire episode? This young man was walking home with a bag of Skittles and just didn't make it home because of somebody walking up on him. And
technically, Trayvon Martin was standing his ground.
Yeah, he was. He didn't stand your ground state.
Right.
Exactly.
That's why I want to end this like the way I started it. Karmelo Anthony is a senior at Fresco Centennial High School, a captain of both the football and track team, holds 2 part-time jobs, and is an A student who is making plans to go to college. He was on track to graduate next month. He has no criminal history and comes from a two-parent household. None of that fits the narrative of what they're portraying him to be. And even though I read this earlier, I wanted to do that again because this is who we're talking about.
And let's make it clear. This is what black social media influencers are painting him to be. Let's make it clear. It ain't. It's white people going to do white people things. We already got that. We're black, right? White people going to do white people shit.
Damn.
No, because we know it is. But I'm taken back to see these Negroes on social media.
But that's how they're gonna get their following. You get 100,000.
Exactly.
You should have had a knife. You don't even know whether they got a knife or not. You get the quick followers. They gonna come and they're gonna be just quickly moved up to the next thing you know, they'll be on national television talking about this is a shame. Really, we need to be talking about conflict resolution skills. And don't get me wrong, there is a place in the space to have the conversation about conflict resolution skills on both sides, because it appears that the white boys and the decedent had a problem with him sitting there.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what Charleston White was saying. Oh, he should have. Well, what about, well, you should know how to handle a bully. Well, what about a bully not being a bully?
Yeah. What about a bully not being a bully?
Because we know there's a lot of dead bullies.
Yeah.
Because bullies didn't know how to stop bullying.
I'm so done with Charleston White. He's the quintessential coon, in my opinion, at this point. You know, he a lot of things that he says are right, but you know, for him to come out with this at this point, sometimes just shut the hell up, brother.
No, he placates. He's the Negro that wears the Confederate flag, and you know, and it is what it is. Like, he does make good points, but then he buck dances because he knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
he knows what he's doing, but that does not solve the problem, and that does not give solutions when you buck dance and agitate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's
just like the black dude with the cowboy hat. The white dude, I wasn't surprised by the comments of the white dude, but then the black dude, like, I'm a black dude, and you know, he co-signing, you know.
Yeah, but that's what they do. You know what I'm saying? That's what they do. Look, Democrats do it. It's about raising money.
It's situational exploitation is the phrase that I'm coining. I want to call
exactly.
You know, any kind of crisis like this, you know, it's a perfect time for you to get a national platform. The brother who, the El Salvadorian man who has been wrongfully deported to El Salvador. This is the time that now you see our senator. He's going down there on a flight. You know, our representative is going down on a flight. We had the damn presidency, the Senate, and Congress in 2021. The time for us to effectuate policy that would have stopped some of this foolishness and give those people some sort of amnesty was then. He didn't do nothing then, but now all of a sudden you down there, you know, want to help. I want to make them give them to me so I can bring them back. Man, sit down somewhere and shut them up.
Exactly.
Use their offices. All these people do is use their offices. You know, I call it an unsophisticated marketing scheme. That's it.
No, bruh.
They're not offering any policy to fix any of the problems in our communities. Okay, they have done nothing but work professional political jobs their entire life. Okay, they start off maybe as a school board rep, and then they progress up to a delegate, and then they progress up to a senator, and then next thing you know, they're running for U.S. Congress or whatever, and they have not done one thing to serve the public as public servants. Just a bunch of mouthpieces. And inside of our party, they pretty much use black and brown people as what I call stage props. You know, this is a stage prop opportunity. In 2021, when we had the presidency, the House, and the Senate,
and we got nothing.
Got nothing. We didn't get
nothing.
Nothing. Student loans forgiven. We didn't get nothing. So,
yeah, listen, AOC first quarter top earner, over $9 million, close to $10 million in donations. And her district is one of the poorest in New York.
Yeah.
But she's out here traveling, talking about oligarchy and all this stuff. And little black kids are getting shot in the street in New York City. And she rakes in $9 million in donations. It's a show. It's a show.
Man, I'm 52.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Black Westchester Magazine, it's the news with the black point of view.